I ever tell you what the definition of doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change? That is crazy.
It's showtime.
What's going on, guys? Django, Fett here, Honey Dun Games, comics, TV shows, movies, and more, and this is a review for Solo, a Star Wars story. So going in, I was not really excited. I didn't really look forward to this. I thought this movie was going to be a huge stinker. But I have to say, this is probably the best Disney Star Wars film I have seen yet. But that's not really saying much, because the rest are garbage. I don't really like the concept of the whole spin-off films, plus a solo film of all movies. I didn't see it. Plus, I'm going to say something very controversial, but I'm not really a big fan of Han Solo. Just in him in general, I was never interested in him in the original trilogy. Believe it or not, I just was not interested in his storyline, the scoundrels and stuff like that. I like the bounty hunters, but I don't like him. This movie was originally directed by the Lord Miller or something like that, whatever their name is, the Lego movie, stuff like that. Even if they still remained and did the movie, I still don't think it would have been that better. But it is directed by Ron Howard, who did the reshoots mainly. But I did end up seeing this movie on a weekday, not a weekend, because I'm not really supporting this movie by any means by watching it on the weekend. And I know it bombed hard on the first opening weekend. But I decided to see it because I was paid by a friend. And that's the only reason I am seeing this movie now. I really wouldn't have seen it either way. But I am going to give my unfiltered thoughts and my honest opinion at the end of the day. So let's talk about this movie a little bit more. So this movie is about this story and the origin of Han Solo, of how he came to be or some shit like that. How he did the Kessel Run, how he met Lando, how he got stabbed in the back a couple times, and how he became this Han Solo character we all know and love. But the problem is, with this iteration of Han Solo, he has the same personality and doesn't really change. Well, you know the Han Solo from the original trilogy, it's basically him in this version as well. He doesn't start off as like this kid who doesn't know any better, and really he does, but he acts like the scoundrel from beginning to end. And it doesn't really change, so I just was a little puzzled by that move. I think it was more of a writing decision more than anything else. Because I have to say, Alden Ehrenreich, for all the shit that I will give him, was actually decent in this movie. Yeah, decent, I said it. I guess those acting coaches really came in handy. He's not as bad or as good as Han Solo, I mean, by any means. He's no Harrison Ford. But he's fine, you know? He's not terrible. He's not, the greatest thing ever. I thought he was just okay, you know? He did his part for the most part, so good on him. But someone who really needed it desperately was Danny Glover, or Donald, is it Danny Glover? Or Donald Glover? I always get them mixed up. I always think Danny Glover is related to Donald Glover. I like Donald Glover. I really don't like Danny Glover. He just did an impression of Lando in this movie the whole time around, but didn't act like him. He didn't he just had the voice like Lando and all this. He tried too hard, and it just didn't work at all. It backfired completely. And then we have one of the worst characters of all time. I'm not gonna say she is the worst in general, but I think it was L3, her name is, the droid. She couldn't shut the fuck up for one moment. She was just yapping and yapping about. She was pretty terrible. I would say she's worse than Jar Jar Binks, to be honest. But I'm not gonna say she's worse than Rose Tico, because Rose was in your face as well, and she was just as fucking bad. So L3, yeah, I mean, she's probably number 2 on my shit list when it comes to worst characters of all time. For Star Wars characters, that is. And those are really all the characters that I want to mention. Emilia Clarke was just, whatever, she's in this movie. But a thing I really want to mention is the cinematography. Because my god, the cinematography was just pretty bad in this movie. This movie had a really bad look to it, a horrible look. This movie's look is the equivalent of going to a bar, seeing just super hot women, 10s, 9s, 8s, really hot, attractive women, just everywhere. And then there's this one right in the corner that is just an absolute just one. It's just super fat, ugly as hell, and she probably has a decent personality, but she's just atrocious to look at. That is Solo in a nutshell. Solo is just, it has this really awful looking black, gray, and blue hue to it. And it's just like, you can't make out the characters, the people, the faces, and it was just so atrocious. It is probably the ugliest looking film I have ever seen. It's surprising because it's like the rest of the films, you know, previous films were just fine. You know, the lighting was good, but the lighting in this is just god awful. When Rogue One looks better than your movie, you know you fucked up. I thought this was going for a more lively look, you know, the scoundrel just doing whatever. And they kind of, like, it doesn't feel like it. It went for a more Rogue One vibe to it, but 10 times worse. I hated it. It was just an ugly looking film to look at. You know, I didn't really react when scenes happened. When people died and, you know, things happen on the screen, I didn't really was like, oh my god, yes. And, you know, I was just relatively just like monotone throughout this movie. Dull. I think that's with most of these Star Wars films, but especially this one in particular, you're just left tone deaf and you don't really care. People die or things happen. You know, I'm sure there's like these cool action scenes, but it just leaves you numb at the end of the day because you're like left with another Star Wars film right around the corner, or it's like the same shit over and over again. I haven't been like excited or, you know, into a Star Wars film since episode 3. And I'm going to go into a little bit of spoilers, so if you don't want to watch that, stop it right now. I'll probably put a timestamp if you want to skip through it. So I'm going to talk about a couple spoilers. So the reveal of Chewbacca was I actually kind of liked. He starts off as a feral beast. Han Solo is like a deserter. They're going to feed him to this beast. For some reason, we're going to feed the deserter to this beast. And talks down to Chewbacca to, you know, help him out. And I kind of liked that, but it was just so drab at the same time. It was so ugly to look at. Everything was super gray. I didn't like the reveal of Han Solo's name. His name was Han. And then when he goes to this Imperial officer, he says he's single. Imperial officers go like, what's your last name? He's like, okay, I'm gonna call you Solo. Like, that's the big reveal of Han Solo's name? Like, Solo's last name? Like, that was fucking stupid. I mean, come on. And then Kira betrays them a couple times. She does her own thing. And she serves her master, who is revealed to be Darth Maul. Wait, what? I think the only reason I see Darth Maul is because the success of Clone Wars, the TV show, and just to connect with the Kenobi film. That's really the only reasons I see as why, you know, Darth Maul comes back. That's the only reason, but it's just, it feels so forced in this movie. Like, he comes out of nowhere in this hologram. He's like, you know, you can see the red, and even though it's like, all holograms are like blue and stuff, whatever. And he has to show his lightsaber too to be so intimidating. He's got his robot legs and shit, and whatever, man. It's just, but then we have like this other rebellion group. They like take off their mask, and you see Alloy, you know, from fucking, what was that game? PlayStation game, whatever. I forget what it's fucking called, but that character, Allo, whatever. She reveals who she is, and you're like, who the fuck are you? Why did you take off your mask? I don't know who the fuck you are. You're with the rebellion? Okay, that's great. But I don't fucking know who you are. I think you guys may know. I freaking have no clue. She just reveals who she is, and we're just like, okay, what's the point if we don't really know who you are, or you were connected in any other film or something like that? Like, why are you doing this? Whatever. But I did like the chemistry of Chewbacca and Han, of course. I did like some of the pilot before he died. There were some moments here and there I kind of liked, you know? But then the next scene over is just revealed with a forgettable scene, like train sequence or some random sequence, and it just leaves you just going like, okay, whatever. It's whatever at this point. This movie is the biggest whatever. So I wasn't terribly impressed, nor was I terribly hating this movie. Nor is it as awful as The Last Jedi, which is the worst of the Star Wars films I've seen yet. This one, Solo, is not that by any means. It's not even close to that. But Solo, a Star Wars story, gets... The good thing about this film is that we don't have to worry about another one of these fucking movies until a year and a half. And then once that time comes, once that final movie comes for the trilogy, I'm fucking done with this shit. And I'm gonna be celebrating like no other. I won't be able to do any of that reviews of any of the Star Wars movies. I'm gonna be done with that shit. And I'm gonna be celebrating my ass off, okay? I'm gonna be celebrating like no other. So I like to end this with talking about the production and the box office real quick. The production of this movie was $250 million, which is more than Rogue One. And why is so high? Because $250 million for a movie that I didn't see as costing that much. I didn't really see this movie costing close to that at all. Maybe 100, maybe 150 million, but 250 million for this fucking movie? For this drab fest? 250 million for this movie. I don't even know if that counts for the reshoots by any means. It could have costed $50 million more. Could have costed $20 million, $10 million, $5 million. Who knows? For the sake of this, we'll just say, well, for the sake of it, we'll just say 300 million, which is insane. Plus, you got to factor in the marketing, which really there wasn't any until like a month going into this movie, a month or two going into this movie, which is absolutely pathetic for a Star Wars film. Usually they do this like the beginning of the year or like spring or summer, and for this movie it was kind of dead on arrival because of the marketing alone. They really pushed all the marketing for that 2-month mark, and that's not how you should do a movie. And especially for Disney's sake, for a Star Wars brand, that's pretty unprecedented. With marketing that's also nearly double that budget. So this movie, in the opening weekend, I think it made 110 million worldwide in this opening weekend, which is not very good. Usually you expect Star Wars films to make their opening weekend, and we heard news about them making more than double the amount of Black Panther, and that was just horseshit at the end of the day. That ended up being just completely false. It's not even looking like it could get 500 million, maybe just 500 million at best, but maybe that's just asking too much. We'll see about the second weekend. Probably put a number over here, but it's pretty pathetic for this movie. So I see this movie as sort of making its budget, but at the same time, that's not to count with the marketing and stuff like that. So it could end up being just a flop in general. It already did in China. It made like 10 million, and that was fucking it. They don't want this fucking movie anymore. And I think that's with most Star Wars films nowadays too. At the end of the day, that's my thoughts of Solo. Let me know what you guys think of Solo in the comment section below. Don't forget to please like this video, comment down below, subscribe to my channel Django Fett, and check out my other Star Wars content when it comes to movie reviews, comic reviews, video game reviews. Check them out. I'll put a link in the description. Please check that out when you can. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.